Tonia had picked such an odd outfit for the beach, a red crocheted dress. In fact, nobody else was wearing such a thing in Crete that morning. What she wore turned everybody's sunglasses into things more similar to paparazzi cameras. Women looked up from their Kindles and their books while tanning to give looks of austere disapproval. The men did not disapprove as much. They did their best to veil their interest. And Tonia did not care about all of this. I had chosen to wear orange swimming trunks, sunglasses, and a whole lot of sunscreen. I might have been the first of my family and ancestors that had ever entered the Mediterranean, and well, our Irish white skin wasn't designed for such an exotic place. I heard the tourists on the shore begin to gossip while I watched Tonia. Even from far away I could see it on her face that she was having fun. "Is she wearing a fishing net?" one tanning woman inquired. Tonia was too far away to hear. "She could have been caught in one." Another sneered. "Fishing nets aren't red," said a man behind the women. It was like the appearance of a mythical character, and for a moment some of the people's subconscious minds on the beach began to try and remember which Greek goddess that was who was wading in the water. They could see her smile even though the hem of her crochet dress was being licked and touched by the shallow water. The people on the sand may have imagined that wearing a wet dress, a dress made of heavy yarn, would have been as annoying as wearing wet socks. But Tonia moved through the water carelessly. She looked happy. "That's such a nice dress," one older lady said. Judging by the focus of her voice, people knew that this old lady was squinting while speaking. "I hope she doesn't ruin it." Tonia's brown hair fluttered in the sea breeze. With most people wearing sunglasses on the shore, she didn't know how many people were watching her. She waded further into the sea. The waters that guided Venus, searching for some familiarity on the skin of Tonia's shins. At first, the hem of her red crochet dress floated on the water, but the wetter that the dress got, and the more water that the yarn absorbed, it began to sink and stick to her legs. She pushed her knees through the water, paying no mind to how much weight the dress was gaining. She was up to her knees. An applause of gusty wind pushed her hair back. She smiled at this and walked further into the sea to her waist. I started out of the crowd on the shore, taking steps onto the sand that got muddier. I could feel people's eyes on me as I edged into the tide. The tide retreated as if to welcome me in and show me to the hostess of the beach, the woman in the red crochet dress. I walked up to her. I shivered and could feel my body become paler because the water was so cold. Sunscreen and goosebumps do not mix. "Tonia," I spoke in a tone snappier than I had planned. She turned around. I took her wrist. "Everybody's talking about you?" All she did was flex her smile, and it relaxed back into whatever tranquility it had been in before. I had seen this coming. She didn't care, but I wanted to warn her anyway. "Walk with me?" Her voice seemed mythological indeed. She slipped her wrist out of my hand, and before I could do anything, she took my hand. Her voice was unique. It was like a mother olive tree had learned to talk. How the muscle of her throat pressed out the oil of her voice. How she spoke in perfect English, but in the accent of another world. "The water is cold," I said. "You'll adjust," she assured me, smiling. She pulled me deeper. The water lapped at my belly. Stepping into new depths where the water was colder was similar to taking a shot of rancid tasting cough medicine as a kid. But seeing Tonia smile made the cold bearable. She led me deeper to where the water came up to our chests. The shore was so far away then, and I felt we were stranded at sea. I could see how dark her dress had become, waterlogged. The criss-crossing yarn over her breasts seemed to be more sponge than wool. I wondered if the dress warmed her in the water, or if the cold water just didn't affect her the way it affected me. We stood out there long enough, at the vanity of the sea, for a mist to powder our faces. It gave Tonia's face a fresh quality. Her smile was cast out into the sea as our bodies were helpless in the melodic bobbing of waves. Up and down and back and forth the water went. Still looking out into the sea, Tonia spoke to me. "We need to stand out here long enough so that when we exit the water, we'll still feel the rhythm of the waves in our bodies." "How long until then?" I asked, feeling cold. "Until we get so used to the waves that we don't even notice them anymore," she answered. It sounded like she was proposing a curse. Her voice made it tempting, but I didn't think I'd be getting used to the water anytime soon. "Dunk with me," she cooed in her voice that all mythology out of envy excluded. She took my hand under water and pulled me. She submerged herself. I followed suit. We bobbed into the sea out of rhythm, but popped up at the same time. She had an over-exaggerated way of catching her breath with one loud gasp. I blinked water out of my eyes. It stung. She maneuvered through the water, encircling me. Her eyes made the sea seem grey and dull, for her eyes blazed brown and green. "Refreshing?" she smiled. There was a teasing nature in her tone, but I knew she didn't mean it. She was just having fun. "Yeah," I muttered. The sun disappeared, it seemed. The earth was sad that man had industrialized, and thus the summer sky became a sickly pale white. But Tonia remained out here in the sea like the final nymph alive, and the last of her species had stolen the red crochet dress. deciding to run into the sea with it. I wondered if this was the sky trying to return to ancient times. It was becoming so congested with the flame of the clouds. And there Tonia and I stood, while everybody else remained on the shore. I think that was when I realized it. "You're magical?" I phrased it like a question because I really wasn't sure. Tonia smiled guiltily. She shrugged, her body being kneaded by the rhythm of the sea. "Λίγο," she said, but her smile made it hard to believe her. "Why?" I asked, but this sounded more like a kind of answer. "Γιατί..." Tonia's smile wavered. She looked at the shore. "Because so many people aren't anymore." I felt my heart sigh. I felt the sigh become imprisoned in my heart, every beat trying desperately to push it out. All I could do was look at her and let my body be kneaded by the rhythm of the sea as well. Her smile returned, and she looked at me. "Do you want to be magical too?" she asked me. I had looked at her for too long, and when I wanted to answer yes, all I could manage to say was the one English word that I remembered. "Why?" I muttered. "All you have to do is come here. Έλα." "And all you have to do is touch my dress beneath the water," Tonia said. I watched the water lift her up by the shoulders. She came back down lightly, and the same was happening to me. "Why?" I mumbled. "Because," she said, hiding a bit of pride in her voice, "my magic is activated by the sea. I had to wear this heavy dress to keep myself from becoming fully realized in front of all these people." The sigh inside my heart exploded. "So, you really are magical?" I asked. "To you," she smiled. I inched forward through the water. I began outstretching my open hand through the zero-gravity water, but a disapproving shout of thunder came. We looked up, then looked at each other. Far away, a hair of lightning flashed. I didn't get to touch Tonia's red crochet dress. We started shuffling back to shore. The sea grew angrier the closer we got to the shore, where people started folding their umbrellas and bundling up their towels. A cold and light rain started misting when we splashed out of the shallows. Tonia's dress was heavier and darker then. Her hair was matted down as well, and her face glistened. She had to make greater strides than I was making, because she had all the extra weight of the damp dress on her. And yet, she moved with a kind of effortless grace. I was shivering, and she was not. I wanted to forfeit a part of myself, some kind of dignity, and beg for a hug, and beg for her to warm me, but I decided not to because we were walking. The rain was picking up. Thunder boomed again. We took a moped back into town. She drove, and I sat behind her, wrapping my arms around her waist. The helmet was too big for her, but she wore it anyway. I remember being taken by a sense of euphoria when my palms pressed into the wet wool of her dress. The way her belly undulated against my hands while she laughed as we drove through the violent rain, it felt serene. We took cover in a cafe. The crowd was taking cover as well. We were soaked and dripping as we stood inside, looking out at the street as rain came strumming down. I was standing next to a spectacle. The way her eyes lit up with a sense of familiarity when she saw the rain punish the pebbled road was dreamlike. We made the best of our time and got croissant sandwiches while waiting for the rain to stop. I ate very slowly because I spent most of the time looking at Tonia, observing how she ate and watched the rain, observing how dark and damp and heavy the red crochet dress was. It seemed to me that the straps of the dress were being strained on her shoulders, having to hold up all the weight of a waterlogged dress. But in an odd way, the dress seemed to be a part of her body. It was an unmistakable part of Tonia. The more I looked, the more I couldn't have imagined her wearing anything else. We went for another moped ride when the rain cleared up. Her dress remained damp, and she remained perfectly comfortable in it. We spent the evening walking around Crete, walking down the hilly pebble roads, walking through the aromas that crept out of family-owned restaurants. The architecture was rustic. The buildings were wide boxes with blue patterns striped around every building. I had a feeling that all the buildings were watching her, watching how her hips moved as she walked, watching how her movements made the ever-dampened red crochet dress move in sync. The night ended on the terrace of Tonia's tiny home. We drank white wine after she made toast with tomatoes, cheese, and olive oil on top of the toast. We sat on lawn chairs. "You're not uncomfortable in that?" I asked her. She just shrugged, holding her glass of wine the way somebody might hold a coffee mug in the morning, with protective, warming fingers. We watched the sunset as the smell of the sea and the smell of the rain argued. She wore the wet dress to bed. The day that Tonia walked into the sea in her crochet dress was years ago, but I still think about it. I had to do it. I haven't seen her since. I haven't talked to her since. But this morning, back home in Massachusetts, I woke up in a spell of madness. I rushed through a couple of thrift shops until I found a red crochet dress and bought it. I must have spent 2 to 3 hours looking for one. The one I found wasn't the same as the one Tonia wore, but it was red and crochet, and that was enough for me. I live nearby by a woods, and in the woods there is a little pond. I hurried through the woods like a madman, holding the dress like the final evidence of Tonia's existence. The dress was wavering in the current of my running. It nearly got caught on branches a couple of times. My shin was scratched by a thorn at one point, but I kept running. I slid into the pond. My knees bore the brunt of my fall into the shallows. Mud splashed up into my shirt. I crawled forward on my knees and shot forward into the water, drowning the dress. I noticed an immediate weight appear within the dress. My eyes darted on the pond's surface, as if there should be bubbles or something, but all I saw were my knuckles and the dress beneath. I pulled the dress out of the water. It had absorbed water all right, but nothing was happening. I looked around the woods, but no one was there. I submerged the dress again, like it was a hostage to torture. I took it back out of the water and surveyed my surroundings. Nothing. Sweat and pond water was all about me then, so the splash when I submerged the dress again didn't bother me. I was waiting to hear a twig snap or something, but all that could be heard was my heavy breathing and the complaints of the pond. I remembered her smile, and I remembered how much colder the sea was than this pond. And that was when my heart became something comprised of wool and yarn. And my heart was waterlogged too. Yes, I could feel the muscles of my heart transfigure into materials for crocheting, and I could feel it becoming heavier and wetter. I swiveled in place, still on my knees and cradling the wet dress. Catching my breath, feeling my waterlogged crochet heart squeeze and unsqueeze within me, I looked around and wondered where Tonia was. You've been listening to Waterlogged Crochet Hearts, a story by Nicholas Leonard, read by Naya Nomiku.